Shopping for a fake watch for the real you? Just call Mo, because that's what he does. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. And folks, we have as our guest today, the star, the co-creator, and the head writer of Mo on Netflix, Mohammed Amer. And look, it was so great to interview Mohammed about the first season of Mo, because I really dug this season. And it's funny, it has drama where you don't expect it, and Mo was very generous with his time about deconstructing what it took to get this into the can, so I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, Backstory Magazine just turned 10. That's right, we have lasted a decade and we couldn't have done it without you. Of course, now is the perfect time to become a subscriber, and it's the holiday season. You could even give a gift subscription to Backstory Magazine. Just in our shopping cart over at backstory.net, you click the little gift box in the checkout cart, and that's how you do it. And look, we just published our Wakanda Forever issue, which has a lot of awards season coverage in it, so it is a perfect time to get in and read us. If you want to see what's in the issue, you can see our table of contents over at backstory.net and surf around there. And if you've never read us before, you could, of course, read our free issue at backstory.net or on our iPad app entitled Backstory. And look, just to make the idea of becoming a subscriber or giving a gift subscription even more appealing, I am offering you discount coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5, and that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page support my passion project. So thanks for considering becoming a subscriber. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our conversation with co-creator, actor, and head writer Mohammed Amer about writing the first season of Mo, which is eligible in multiple categories for TV writing from the WGA and beyond. Okay, so Mo, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, brother.
You are all the way around the world. You're in Dubai right now, right?
I am in Dubai doing the GQ event here for Man of the Year stuff. So, you know what I mean? Like, we're just doing it different now. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's just a blessing. It's lovely. I'm going to go to the World Cup final as well after this. Just kind of taking a little moment after a really spectacular year, but just so much hard work. You know how much work goes into this stuff. Like, it's just really painful at times, like physically, mentally.
Well, this will not be painful at all. I promise you. This will not be painful. And you know all the answers to my questions because it's about you. So I want to give our audience a baseline. At what point, in your life, did you realize that comedy was a path that you wanted to approach?
Forever, I would say, when I was 10 and I saw live stand-up comedy for the first time. But recently, I was reminded of it, just in a conversation I was having with a random friend who, the last family vacation I took before the war erupted in 90 in the Gulf War, because I was born in Kuwait, for those who don't know. Left Kuwait after the Gulf War, which inspired the entire series. The last time we went, we were in Egypt, we were in Cairo, and my father took my mother and my brother and I to a play, which was starring the iconic comedic actor named Adil Imam. He's such an iconic comedic actor. We saw what Sayyid al-Shaghan, an incredibly hysterical play. And that was, I think, the first impact, that the first real seed. My mom always told me I had it before I even knew. It was like a little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and the gestures I would do and the movements I would make, or how I would turn off the TV and start entertaining the family. And Adil Imam is his name. Adil Imam is an iconic comedic actor that I definitely borrowed a lot of stuff from him, and that's what I would say it started. I was 7 years old. I saw that play, and it was my first experience of not only watching something that's so well written, but also so highly executed at the top of someone's game. It was really incredible.
Well, when you got to the United States, as the show shows, of course, you ended up in Houston. And what were your early impressions of American comedy?
Well, I had no knowledge of it, no real understanding of its history or anything like that. I landed in America 2 days before Halloween. And then Halloween happened. I have no concept of what Halloween is.
Right.
You're talking about someone that was really the preservation of someone's youth and innocence was taken very seriously and very different. and then being exposed to like all these crazy demons everywhere and everything was like surreal. But like on the comedy side, not until I started stand up when I was 17 that I really like started professionally. I started when I was 14, but starting professionally at 17, where I was being educated by the elders around me. We're like, oh man, you sound like, Sam Kinison. And I was like, who's Sam Kinison? They're like, what?
He is the greatest. I actually
like,
got
you
to
sound
see
like
him
Eddie
once.
Murphy.
Yeah.
Did you really? That's incredible. So I was just like being schooled by all those old timers. Like, oh, you sound like Eddie Murphy, or Eddie Murphy did this. I'm like, who's Eddie Murphy? And they're like, shut the fuck up. like, but you got to remember, I've only been in the country 8 years at that point.
Right.
So I had zero reference of anything. The only person that I really admired and looked up to at that time was Chris Farley. Like, I absolutely loved Chris Farley. I loved John Candy. Those were like people I really, really like admired very, very much. And I used to do impressions of Chris Farley in particular in high school, and I would do stand up in high school as Chris Farley while I was roasting the class. Like, that was the way I would, entertain. And I met him when I was 14.
Oh wow!
I forgot what it was. Planet Hollywood openings is one of those things. And I saw the whole list of everybody that's coming, and I saw Chris Farley, and that's all I cared about. Like, it's like Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger at the height, and I could care less. Like, to me, it was just, you could tell, like, that's all I was supposed to do, because I wanted to be Chris Farley, and I did. So after I started stand up at 17 professionally, I had a great mentor, Danny Martinez, who truly schooled me about comedy, stand up in particular, but it bled into all these different art forms, from like vaudeville, days to present day. So I just really started learning a ton about live performance, what it takes from technical performance, and the history of stand up or comedy in America. And it was just really just mind blowing. Well, people forget that there's 3 indigenous art forms to America. It's jazz, hip hop, and stand up. So jazz proliferated all over the world. It was everywhere, and had early childhood of listening to jazz. I already knew it, was familiar with it. Didn't like obviously know the history of it, but was familiar with it. So once I heard stand up for the first time, I couldn't believe it. And equally hip hop, it was a big moment for me. I was like, whoa, I got it right away. I was like, oh, this is like oppressive poetry. Like, this, people are talking about their own oppression or their own ego and their own, like desires, worldly, which they had not had, their mothers, like, it was really incredible to see. And so comedy was like just something that I really was drawn to. It was deeply therapeutic for me, and I found it so fascinating. And I was completely drawn to something that I could be so expressive and free about with my speech. And that was something really foreign to me, while making people laugh and think, like, wow, that's special.
Were you like a comedy album junkie? You would like listen to all the old albums, search them out, all the old specials on VHS?
So I didn't have any money, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, I didn't have any money, so it was really rough. But there was a comedian, an open micer, old timer, that came in and gave me like a dozen VHS tapes. He was the one that, I wish I remembered his name. He just popped in infrequently, but when he saw me, he was just really like nurturing in a way, like a father. He saw that I was so young and fish out of water, and was like, I think you're wildly misunderstood, and you should know the history. So once he found out, he was like, yeah. And then sometimes he'd be like, oh, you sound like Bill Hicks. I'm like, who's Bill Hicks? I'm like, what the fuck? So he came and brought me like a dozen VHS tapes, and I went through them all rapidly. One of them was like Dana Carvey's HBO special. It was like a bunch of random HBO specials that I absolutely adored. And I went through them. And after that, of course, anytime I can get an album, I would get my hands on it. Carlin was a big one. Eddie Murphy's albums, all of Bill Hicks's albums. They were all like something that I just was drawn to. And I listened to Chris Rock's Bigger and Blacker, something I listened to on a regular basis. And I would constantly be playing them in the background so I could just like understand the cadence and the way they change inflections in different parts. And it was just a complete masterclass. And I was drawn to that storytelling. As an Arab from my background, like, just like, that's our history, right? We tell stories. 1001 Nights is like classic book of many tales and Arab tales. So it just made perfect sense. So there was like, you understood like there was different buckets in stand up as well. You got the one-liner guy, the Rodney Dangerfield, who I absolutely adore, and nobody else ever like him. think the
I love
closest
Rodney
one that became a
Dangerfield, and
uniqueness.
I will actually say I love
Love it.
Rodney Dangerfield. And to any of our listeners out there who are following along and want to see one of the great times that Rodney Dangerfield and Sam Kinison are in the same movie, look no further than Back to School, because it is a fantastic film with Sam Kinison as the teacher. But I want to talk about your writing for a second. So, you have 2 Netflix specials that people could watch, comedy specials. And I was thinking about it the other day. One of the only other writers that I've really interviewed that's talked extensively about what it's like to write a comedy special and write for comedians would be Judd Apatow. In his early days of starting out, he was doing stuff, honestly, for Roseanne, for her stand-up specials. That was kind of one of the ways that he was breaking in. What did you learn about writing by writing your own comedy specials?
A ton. The cool thing about stand-up is, first of all, you have an audience that tells you if it sucks or not immediately, right? Versus being in a room by yourself and you're like, this is good. And then somebody reads it and like, well, I done. You know what I mean? Like, so you have like an immediate reaction, which is awesome. And then for me, the way I came up and the way my mind works is very free and free flowing and in my process. So I take a subject matter, I have like all the little bullet points in my own, in the back of my mind. And then the audience reaction will inspire the next line. Like it's all freestyled. So initially, even when I was a kid, I was like 18 and I would write my notebook and I'd put everything together. And I was like, it's just like my mind is too fast. And how can I catch up? Well, you just do it on stage. That's how you do it. And you build up the courage to be spontaneous all the time. It's the only way. And that's how I write. That's how I write up, like my stand-up in particular. And Carlin talked about this extensively. So he was just like very keen on like he would just write every single word, and he was really admired people that can just flow. And I do a little bit of both now, but mostly it's all freestyle. Like I take an idea and I just take it on stage and I write down, of course, like certain thoughts that I have, certain concepts that I want to work out. And I call that my savings account.
Okay.
I keep it in there. And whenever I want to withdraw from it, I withdraw. How that works.
There's another step, though, that for some people that I've talked to that are either musicians or comedians, when they're kind of riffing like that, they record themselves and then they listen to it back later and either, transcribe it if they're a comedian, or they see what they like musically and they go back. Sure. Had you done stuff like that to keep track of what you're saying live?
So I have a really, really big rule that I don't ever take anything in my hands. Like I don't take any crutches. I don't take an audio recording device. I don't take any notebooks on stage. It's a huge no-no for me. It didn't start out that way. I took a notebook on stage once in front of my mentor, Danny Martinez, who owned the Comedy Showcase, which is the Comedy Showcase no longer there, but it was an institution. It was there for 30 years in Houston.
Wow.
And I remember taking a notebook. I was like, I saw other guys. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just take a notebook. I didn't know. I was fucking 17. So I take my notebook on stage, and after I get off, he berates me. And he goes, you're too smart for that. He goes, don't do that. He goes, everything that you have in your mind. And if you can't remember it, do something else until you do. And building up that muscle was a really incredible thing that he did for me there, because it's good and bad to where I just like, I won't take anything. And people are like, it's just a recorder. So because of that, I've had moments, a lot of them where hours of freestyling was going. That was hilarious in the moment. That'll never be done again. Which I kind of like, honestly. It's just like this output. This whole idea is like, I don't have any more material. No, you can just go on forever, bro. Like you can. And you can be very different. You can be, singular in your own thought process.
Right.
To where even a subject matter that you broach and maybe somebody else touched, but you saw another corner in it that somebody else didn't. And that's fine. It's also great too. I try to avoid those things as much as possible. For now, like my mind is so, it just consumes things pretty quickly. So I try to stay away from anything that can influence me. But that's how I do it. But now I video as much as possible. I hire somebody to do it. Like I have it. I rarely watch because I remember on stage. I go up there. And even that line is like, what is that thing I freestyle? Damn it, blah, blah, blah. And then on stage, it'll just come. It's crazy how that works.
Yeah.
Off stage, I can't remember it to save my life. You can put a gun up to my head. You're like, what's that fucking line? You're dead. I'm dead, bro. I'm dead. But I get on the stage and there's a crowd and there's the pressure, there's the thing. And it just happens. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean it's wild because you don't even need video technically these days. You could just use voice memo on an iPhone, and then
I know,
you could take that
we'll do
MP3 and have it like transcribed with one of the AI transcribers, and
right.
there's like, and then you could go through the notes and see exactly what you said or damn close, because those things are only like 95% accurate. But
Yep.
yeah, that's interesting. Well, I want to get to the show, and obviously crucial to the show is your partner in crime, Rami Youssef. And
Mhm.
you were on his TV show, Rami. And
Sure.
talk about kind of that relationship and getting a feel for scripted television.
Being on the show Rami was an amazing experience, of course. I mean, working with a friend and brother was a really fun time. Like the whole cast is dope. Like just enjoying my time with Dave Merhej. Like you put me, Dave. I just love making fun of him. Because we all love making fun of Dave. He's like the best in the best loving, big brother. Even though he's older than me, he's just like I don't know, just somebody's adorable, and we all just hang out. Yeah, the best. Just every time we get together, we all just have so much fun. So on that side of things, and like the idea that we're all getting together to make the show was really really exciting and a huge learning process. And for me also, like I haven't been in a television, even though I know I can act and I can do it, is one of those things that gave me the ability and showed the proof of concept. Like this guy can do this, and he does stand up and he writes. So it's just a beautiful thing to have together to move on and do, to have the ability to do my show. And Rami always knew that. Like, I was working on my show before he even thought about a show. Like I wrote that, I was thinking about the flashback in episode 7 that you see in my series now. I had that in my back pocket for almost, this is December of 2014.
Wow.
So that's when I first initially thought of that idea, and I was sharing with everybody. And I was very gun ho about like, no, I need to do my first stand up special first, and then I'll do my series. And we just came together to do the show, and I was just like, this is incredible to do his show, which I'm so happy to support it, be a part of it. And so I have a lot of gratitude. We have great relationships with each other. So we always knew that I was going to go off and do my own thing and how to do it and how to mold it. And having that experience on Rami was invaluable on that side. And equally, like doing Black Adam was a big like learning curve of to do something on such a big scale and to
Right.
like a shadow the director and the DP there was like another insight. It just made everything so much easier, right? Like doing Rami, working together, seeing how that works, and then going to see Black Adam, something so huge on that kind of scale, and then to find that balance to do my own things, it was like a masterclass for us. Like,
Let's get into Mo. Let's talk about the concept of like what you pitched for season 1. We're still in our non-spoilers section, but talk about how difficult it was to, you're coming from a most favored, place in which you have 2 specials on Netflix. So that can't hurt you, but you're then ready to pitch Mo, and you have, Rami by your side as your co-creator. What was the experience like of kind of pitching it and getting it set up as a show? And then we'll talk about the writing of it.
well, I only had one special at the time, and I had season 1 of Rami out. It just came out.
Okay.
And so we had those 2, and then it was like the relationship was A24, Rami, and myself pitching my series. So that was like the team. And we figured out the pitch. Obviously, we walked through it, figured out the pitch. And my whole thing was, I'm very visual. Like I want to create that visual for whoever's in front of us, whether it be an artist friend of mine, or whether it be a commenter, or whether it be an executive. I find it really important to have like to create a visual for the whole situation. So, it was more like a phenomenal like 1, 2, 3 punch, between all 3 of us. And I would set it up, cue it up, boom, and I would go into what the series would look like. Here's a scene, for instance, and I pitched the flashback in episode 7, which was originally in the pilot, and I swapped that around in post, but I had that there, and I put a speaker on the table. I played Elvis Presley, "That's All Right," and I acted out the scene that I've had in my head for like at that point 7 years, 6 years.
Are we talking about the flashback of the 99-cent store?
No, we're talking about the flashback in Kuwait when we're fleeing the Gulf War, and that one shot
Okay.
coming in out of the room, my mom is getting the money and then the bus.
Gotcha. When she's packing.
So before, the part that I had figured, like it was all that lead up before the bus. That's what I was
Okay.
playing up in the room. Just hearing like Elvis Presley, that's all right, mama.
Right.
That's all right with you. In the background with the Arab family fleeing war was just such a fun, like interesting thing. And just acting out every single person's role in that situation was very lively. And Rami and I were like a phenomenal 1-2 punch in that scenario with A24 by our side was a strong move. It was like a strong overall move. And we had something that's so fleshed out and worked out for so long made it for the best pitch, of course.
What'd you use as your visuals?
I'm just acting it out. I'm saying use the. I'm saying
you were acting it out. Got it.
Yeah. I literally had a speaker. I'd put it on the table, I'd play the music, and I would act it out. With sound effects. I did the sound effects. Coming out of the room, my mom's sewing. You see her, little Mo's on the other side. He's smiling at her. He's cutting the thread, and the music is playing around there. It was just really fun, entertaining, and it made things super easy to visualize.
Some people walk in with pitch decks. Some people walk in with videos of like other movies for reference points, but that totally makes sense. You acting it out. And obviously the flashback is one part of your show. And then it's taking place in modern day Houston, seeing, your grown up character. And so did you just combine those two efforts in the room? Was that basically the structure that you knew all along in which it would go back and forth?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And we wanted to make sure that Houston was also another character in the series, right? In the backdrop. Yeah. Like we wanted to make it feel like you're in Houston, both on the casting side, on the visual side, and trying to capture as much of Houston as we can in one season, so it was so much fun to pull that off, and it makes me smile because the city that adopted me and took care of me, that I love, that's home, and to give it its first narrative sitcom ever, that's just that's such a beautiful thing.
One of the things that I liked about your concept for the show is that although it's autobiographical, it's actually not about Mo trying to be a comedian or do stand-up.
Yeah.
And no, exactly. But I mean, that would have been the easy route. You could easily see a show about an up and coming comedian. And we've seen a lot of those before. How did you get to the concept of Mo is perpetually trapped in the hustle? The only spoiler I'll say is in the first 3 minutes of the pilot, he loses his job due to his immigration status. And so the rest of the show, we see him hustling to try and make a living, and it has nothing to do with comedy. And I really like that concept.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is inspired from, The Vagabond, the first stand-up special, and my experiences traveling without a passport. And then you said it, right? There's been a lot of shows about guys trying to be a comedian, and we wanted to avoid that. So Rami and I really got into it and be like, hey, he'd constantly hear me telling stories about how he used to sell sunglasses, I would hustle, I would do this. And really, my whole life has been that way. Stand-up comedy is a fucking hustle. It's just a grind, a few can experience. It's just a whole thing. It's not only just the writing thing, which is a whole other grind and a hustle, of course, but also the performance side of things, where it makes it just really, really difficult on your body and mind and your ego, and showing up to Ramada Inn with fucking 7 people there. Do an hour, so it just seeing that and us talking about it on a regular basis was something that he and I thought that would be that Rami and I thought would be a good pop off and an interesting path to kind of see what that would look like. And interesting for me as a performer as well, right? I didn't want it just to be oh, well, this is Mo from my life. I wanted to do something where it gives me a challenge.
You're straddling the reality of fleeing Kuwait and the things that have been ingrained in your mind since your childhood, but you're also expanding it of here is a darkly comedic look at the immigrant experience in the United States.
Exactly. And that's something I got to give credit to Rami, because he really was focusing on my performance, and I got to give it up for him for that. He really was just thinking about how can I push your buttons? Because he and I go back and forth creatively a lot. We're completely different tastes. I have certain things, I love certain things. We both kind of like certain same things, but not really. That makes it even better creatively, personally. I really like that. I really like having this person who can bounce off these ideas together, and you can challenge each other in a great way. There's things that I have, he doesn't have, the things he has that I don't have. So it's perfect. We can fill all those gaps together. So it's beautiful. He really was focusing on that, and that opened up a whole other thing for me. I'm yeah, that's right. I should challenge myself as much as possible. with my performance.
I guess I would say about your performance, obviously, it paid off. Congrats on your Independent Spirit Award nomination, because that's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah,
And that just happened.
It's a blessing, man. I know,
Yeah,
it just happened.
and you deserve it.
Just all doesn't feel real. Thank you, man. I got busted my balls doing this. Like, I just really killed myself doing this. I'm so happy. It makes me really, really. Man, I just get a lot of gratitude, man. I feel a lot of gratitude.
Yeah, well, you deserve it. Well, so I want to get into the writing. So did you did you sell it in the room to Netflix, or did you have to pitch around town?
Yeah, we pitched. I mean, we pitched
Okay.
around town, and there was multiple interested parties. And yeah,
Okay.
and Netflix sent it straight to series.
Did you get a stupid note that you want to tell us about by a company that you were like, nah, this is not the right fit? You don't have to name the company, but it's always funny to hear kind of silly or dumb executive notes for people that don't grasp the concept, if any of that like flew your way.
Oh no, I didn't. We didn't feel that way, honestly.
Okay.
Like in the pitch and in the stuff, like we didn't feel that way at all.
Great.
It was more like they went straight to series. And it was like it was hard to pass up the idea of like, hey, you're gonna do the show. Like, we don't have to go through the old traditional process. Like, we write the pilot. If we like it, maybe we make it. Oh, we like it. Okay, should we make it? We made it. The pilot. Okay, do we like the pilot? like we didn't have to do all that, but
that's awesome.
Still, like, so hard to do, right?
I want to get right into the writing. So this is your first experience, creator of a TV show as a screenwriter, and you have a great partner at your side in Rami. What were some of the things that were eye-opening to you about screenplay structure and finding kind of the motion for the series?
Well, outlines really helped a lot for me, and just kind of like understanding, aside from obviously having the beats and breaking things down, but really having an outline really helped me with the structure of screenwriting. That really put me in a great space. And I think, like, when you're filming a special and you're making a stand-up special, you have to edit yourself frequently. So I don't live by like, oh, I really love this, I can't let this go. I always think about the story. So that was constantly my focus. So once my eyes were on that prize of making the best story possible, while not being as verbose, like, that changed everything for me and focused everything for me. And figuring out the full scope of characters, because it's very complex.
Right.
Not only like the people that you want to show and all the characters you want to have in your season. Houston is a big thing. The diversity factor. Who is what? Because my friend group is extremely diverse. I'm talking about like all over the planet was represented in my friend group that were born and raised in Houston, that speak multiple languages, that is just regular for them to speak English in the world and then come home and speak Spanish, for instance. So it was just one of those things, like, how do you do that? And then, like, the complexities of my political background, like, this is, like, it's so hard to pull that off. Like, you have the court case, you have the Arab factor. Like, I'm born overseas, I want to be American. What does that mean? All those layers of feeling belonging. Like, okay, how do you pull that up? And then this, like, being very specific about the immigration process. How do you show that? How many court cases do we have? I got a ton of those stories. Like, which one where do you put it? How do you spread that out? Well, that was the most challenging part of the whole thing.
Sorry to interrupt. Just for our listeners that haven't yet seen the show, it's the court cases he's talking about is getting asylum status in the United States, in which that's another interesting part of the show, is that the family is kind of trapped in limbo. And it's
absolutely,
it's crazy that like 30 years after they came to the country, they still are trapped in limbo. Did it
20,
really take
20, it's about 22 years. It took me about 20 years to get my citizenship. So in our world, it's been about 21, 22 years.
Okay.
Because they're in that world. So yeah, it's just very, very, like, there's all these like nuance, right? And then like the Arabs overseas, I'm like, that's bullshit. They're gonna tell this bullshit. And then at home in America, they'd be like, well, that's not accurate. Like, you got to be very, very specific. So my whole thing was like consulting the right people, having them on board. Even my immigration attorney, who has practiced, consulted on the show, made sure to understand the entire scope of it. Like, everyone, for me and my writers, everyone to be together on the same page. Like, these are all like really important. Also, it's like, it's about being stateless as well. Like, what does that mean? Not having a home, but you do, but you can't go back there. What does that mean? And generational statelessness, like having that, like, there's my mom's experience and there's my experience being second generation in this situation. Like, how do you? That's very important detail. We can't lose that. So where do we make room for that? Like, so all this is just really, really critical to it. So once I figured out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to put it, then it made the writing part a lot easier. You know, putting it into the screenplay a lot easier, but it's still a grind, man. Like every day, like every fucking day, like on set, we're changing lines. Like, we're going back and forth. It's just like constant.
As preparation, did you read screenplays? Did you read other TV shows? Any screenwriting books to prepare for your first experience, or did you just dive right in?
Well, I've read story. You got to read the Bible. You know what I mean?
Robert McKee. He's
Robert McKee. And then it was that. I started reading different screenplays, but then I like really enjoy, like, I'm a really visual person too. Like, I can see it pretty easily, like in time. Like, having an understanding of being on stage and having this much time helps so much.
Sure.
And then you watch that in film and in television, you understand like this, you know, you understand how much you put down on paper is what's going to end up on television. Like, that was like, it's prepped me for my whole life, like, truly. But reading different examples, of course, was very beneficial, and just understanding that. But I'd see, like, also from script to script, like, there's certain differences, but it was very easy. After that, it was like really simple. Like, once, because I know the story so well, it felt really good. It was more of like an embarrassment of riches. Like, how much do we want to talk about? Oh shit, this is too long. We need to bring it back a little bit, you know?
When you sit down to write, do you give yourself a certain amount of time to write for, or do you try and hit a page count each day when you sit down to write?
Yeah, I don't do the page count thing. That's scary. That's like crazy to do. I think for me is like, I do the same thing, same kind of approach I do my stand-up. I think. Of course, I have my beats. I know what I need to hit, but I need to, like, for the dialogue itself, I need to have a lot of inner dialogue for myself.
Yeah.
And once I'm there, it's about like, I need like straight 12-hour session to just put most of it on paper. But I need like several days of just overthinking and almost losing my mind.
Yeah.
And then eventually I'll go on a crazy, 24-hour straight type shit. Like I'll just go off on it, and then I'll proof it a couple of times before I'm ready to share it. But yeah, that's usually my process. It's really painful. I don't really recommend it. It's probably better to do a few pages, I think. But just the way I work, like that pressure is really good for my creativity.
Yeah.
Especially with writing, because I go back to, like, I'm used to the audience being in front of me, and that pressure and that spontaneity is really great. So that I try to recreate it, not on purpose. It's just how it happened. And I learned a lot from that process too. And I know I'm going to tweak it. I'm excited about tweaking it.
Well, podcast listeners, we have run out of our non-spoiler section. It is pretty much impossible to talk anymore about Mo without getting into spoilers. So
it's really frustrating.
Here's the good news.
That's why there's a lot of like,
no, we're getting into the spoilers right now. Here's the good news. If you have not yet watched Mo, it is probably in your pocket on your phone. I beg of you, don't watch it on your phone, but go to Netflix, watch Mo season 1. Press pause right now if you haven't yet seen it, because we are going to get into the spoilers, and then come on back and listen to the rest of the podcast. So getting into the spoilers, I think the easiest place to start is the pilot. You have a lot going on in there. It is perfect, obviously, to start as a flashback.
We have like another 10 pages.
Well, I want to hear it. I want to hear about it. Like, what were some of the trials and tribulations of getting that pilot done? Already, you've told us that your flashback of throwing the money in the bags and packing it was originally intended for the pilot, but was saved till later in the season, which had more impact, which I thought was cool. Tell us about the trials of the pilot. How long did it take you to get your first draft?
Thank you for saying that, by the way, because I constantly think about that.
No, it's great. It's great. But so tell us about how long it took you guys to get that pilot in script shape, and what the big lessons of it were, because you're introducing the family, you're introducing the world, right. Your whole pilot is world building, and you have 22 minutes to do it?
Yeah, 24, and I think it ended up at 24 minutes.
Yeah, it's short, like, because you're on a half-hour show.
Brutal. Yeah, it was brutal. There's so many things. Well, again, like, it's just attaching to the story, right? Like the confessional scene that's in episode 3 was originally in the pilot. It was like a build-up. I think we ended up having, there's so many versions. Give me a second, but I think we had, the way I had it was like, I wanted we wanted to have the confessional. We had it in episode 1, which was about 6-7 minutes longer than what we put out.
Okay.
And then we started understanding, like, oh, well, moving it here might be better. Or moving it to episode 2, I think, is the move. Well, maybe, you know what? No, episode 3 is where it needs to go. And we started shifting things around, and it made the pilot a lot clearer.
So you're saying the confessional, when Maria takes him to her church, was originally in the pilot?
Yeah.
Oh,
and the
wow,
pilot was like, the pilot was like a massive panic. Well, if you saw the original script, it was like probably, like I said, it was like 7 to 8 to 10 pages, maybe longer.
Okay.
So it was a little bit over 30 minutes at that point. That's the cool thing about Netflix. It's not really like a time restriction. Right. It's like, we don't have commercials or anything where network television is in play. So we had the ability to do that, but we also didn't want to do that. We didn't want to bore people to fucking death. But also on top of like having it so long, we have any lulls at all, any fat at all whatsoever was not okay, not going to happen. And it was just really stressful. The episode was like, so much happens, you know what I mean? Like, but it was great. Like I wanted it to be just nonstop anxiety. Like I just wanted to just fucking put as much pressure as possible. Because look, the more the better, because you can always take it back.
Right.
It's a lot harder to add, in my opinion, than it is to take away. Like for me. Like that was I don't mind. I'm a cutter, man. I'll just cut some shit. You know, like I'm just ready. Like I'm just for the story. I'm dedicated to that. That's where my focus is. And I know I've said it so many times already, but it really is a mantra that everybody needs to like try to live by, and fuck your feelings. You know, like it's about the story. So we just tapered it back a bunch. You know, we just really tapered it back and like spreading it out as best as possible. And it was a great move. It took us a few months to put it together, but obviously like it was a constant adjustment.
Well, I mean,
the point.
That move in particular was really important to drop in episode 3 because really setting up the interfaith relationship, Catholic, Muslim between Mo and Maria it was better to let that breathe a little before, she goes to a confessional at her church, to try it out, which was, a great scene. So that was a very smart move.
It's a great move, but also like we had multiple versions where he went and it was like the planting of the seed, and it was more comical, and he's kind of avoiding his feelings still and not really paying attention. And then she forces him to go back, and that's where the breakdown happened. I think it was definitely more impactful to have one stand out and spread it to episode 3. Yeah. And it became more painful for me as a performer in that situation, to be honest, building up to it. And it was such a serious subject matter that my father truly went through. So it was like, wildly cathartic, yet amazing. And having Bump B playing the priest was just awesome. But that was the move.
And so was there anything else that was like cut or ditched from the pilot that you want to tell us about that never came back into another episode?
No, the only thing is that we, even in post, I ended up moving the flashback to episode 7. Like that's the only thing that happened.
Another great move.
There's a lot of stuff that happened, but I probably forgot it. There's so many little things. You know what I mean? Like it was so many, like you got so much to think about on the ground. But yeah, I would say that most of it is there. I probably wanted a little bit more time in the cell phone shop. I had to like absolutely nitpick. I probably wanted more setup of that world. But that's what I always wanted anyway, was we wanted to see our character speaking multiple language right out of the gate and to show how worldly he is, yet so lost.
You touched on it a second ago about upping the anxiety. And as the series was going on, I couldn't help be reminded of the kind of dark comedic anxiety from something like Uncut Gems, where you have this character trapped in the middle of a lot of chaos. He's well-intentioned, but he is causing some of his own chaos as well, even though he would not admit it. And I really like that you were able to just keep that going. So at what point did that come up as an idea?
Man, when I watched that movie, I deeply related to it. It felt like my life, obviously, very different. There was a lot of pressure. The idea of putting it putting our main character in such a pressure cooker situation and how much we can build off of. And my whole life I've been in that pressure cooker, like personally, but always finding a way out. And we wanted to keep building and building and building on that while he's losing himself and adding a drug addiction to it, where he's self-medicating for whether it's his emotional or truly his physical pain is, in doubt. So
right.
It was really, really important for us to keep that pressure on throughout the entire season. And for him to come to realization how bad he fucked up by the end of it, to see how far gone he is for something that his family or out of his ego or what have you, he's just lost himself. He's someone who really, really needs help, and we can all just deeply relate to that. Who doesn't, who hasn't been lost, trying to find their way back into who they actually are. So it was just like so much fun to play. Honestly, exhausting like to play,
sure.
But so entertaining for me as a performer to pull that off, and highly relatable because that's been my life. Like touring without a passport, for instance, was a huge obstacle where I had to like maneuver and figure out different laws in different countries and get visas, and sometimes not, like flying to another country where it enabled me to perform in another country because I could take a train straight there. Like that's been my whole life. So when Rami heard those stories from me, he was like, bro, we should just put you in a pressure cooker as much as possible and could do that. I was like, yeah, because that's what I need to do, is to constantly have our character in a situation where he has to like work his way out of it, but also losing himself to this lean addiction.
To that effect, it's interesting because, again, the pilot could have been a million different things. The series could have been a million different things. You expect that it's maybe going to be lighter. But as you just said, you show the ultimate American experience that Mo goes through in episode 2 when he's in a mass shooting at a grocery store and he's grazed by a bullet. And then the ER techs are debating if it even is a mass shooting because it's under 4 people. And it's just, showing this crazy part of the American experience. But then, yes, he has this codeine cough syrup addiction, I guess you would define it as. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It's codeine. It's AKA lean. This is something that it's riddled the Houston hip hop community.
And so you throw that in there, but you also throw him into, the claws of Dante, the gangster, and how he owes a favor to him. And, Dante is very dangerous, as we've seen. So I was just like, how did you discuss tone for the show? Because I definitely did not expect it to go in that darker direction, but it absolutely did. And it kind of keeps you on your feet of where is this show's footing? And tone is really important to balance the comedy and the drama of that.
You see me rubbing my eyebrows in my eyes because it was like a thing for me the entire time we were developing the show. It's like there's nothing really to relate it to. There's nothing like, what is it? Give me examples. And I struggled so much. We all did. We're like, well, shit, is this like Breaking Bad meets Curb? Like, what is this? I was like, I don't know. I love that, it's just like figuring out the pacing and the tone of it. It's just like, hey, just stay focused on the story and what we're trying to tell here and the characters, and the tone will reveal itself, especially with having like the flashback elements and then coming back into the modern day in Houston and present day. And what does that look like? And the hustle, trying to figure out like his space in the world and where he belongs and his family and all this emotional trauma and everything else. Like, how do you balance that? And what's the tone? What does it sound like? So I start off with the music. Like, music really helped me a ton to try to reach conclusion on the tone, like especially like in post. Was that. I was like, well, what kind of music do I like? This is who I am. I'm like a little bit Palestinian folk music. I'm a little bit hip hop. I'm a little bit bluegrass. I'm a little bit country. I'm a little bit blues. It's just like that's really helped us a ton with like the pacing and the feel of it and where I wanted to take it. So it was a deep struggle, as you can see now. Like, it's made my existence was talking about tone. Like, I don't know where the fuck it is. Like, is it Breaking Bad? Is it this? Is it that? Like, I don't know. Is it Sopranos? I studied Sopranos a ton.
So have we all?
Just one of those things. Yeah, exactly. So it was just one of those things that I really just had to just be patient with it.
Yeah.
It was really hard, but you had to be patient with it.
Ooh, hey, I'm just jumping in really quick to remind you to check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. We just turned 10 this year, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thanks so much for supporting independent film journalism. But since it's the holiday season, of course, you could also give the gift of backstory to the storyteller in your life. Just use the gift box at checkout at backstory.net. And, look, if you've never read us before, you could test drive us. You could read the free issue of Backstory on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, which coincidentally is called Backstory. Now is the perfect time to subscribe because we just published our Wakanda Forever issue, which has a lot of awards season stuff in it as well. You could see the full table of contents over at backstory.net. So there is a lot to explore. And if you want to subscribe to sweeten the deal, I am offering discount coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5. It works over at backstory.net. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where all these Zoomcasts go. It would really mean a lot to me to have you support my passion project. So thanks for considering becoming a subscriber. But now let's return to our conversation with Mohammed Amer about the first season of Mo, which is on Netflix and eligible for multiple categories of the WGA Awards and beyond. Something I really respected was the relationship with Maria. It was really well written. Her performance was fantastic as well, but it was really well written, and it had a very good realism to it, in which there was a setup and payoff, in which when she's trying to get a loan for her business, you learn that her father maxed out her credit cards and destroyed her credit earlier in her life. And when Mo is kind of riddled by all of these uncut gems moments and the world is kind of tightening around him, he kind of lies to her and he gaslights her. And she says right out, she's like, I'm getting a vibe of I used to get from my dad, and I don't know why. Like, I could trust you, right? And you get this good three-dimensional relationship in which they're in a committed relationship. But I really admired that when they go to someone else's wedding and he has the epiphany that he wants to propose and knows that, she's the one for him, that she rejects him. You don't lean into the cheesy TV movie moment of, oh, yes, like I'll accept you with all your problems. She knows that at this moment in his life, he is bad news for her, and she turns him down. Talk about the evolution of that relationship in the writer's room, because it was good to see.
Yeah, no, it was really important to give her space. By the way, Soprano Sessions is like one of my favorites. That book, and I really looked into that book as far as like tone and figuring that out.
Yeah.
Anyway, the relationship with Maria was obviously deeply critical to show the religious differences, also grounding Maria as like a boss babe, like really strong female lead from a Mexicana like background that's really grounded and real. Like Teresa Ruiz is from Oaxaca, like she's the real deal, So that was exciting for me to work with her. What a great talent, right? So it was just like, how do we make her strong? Like, okay, I want her to own her own mechanic shop. Like, that's dope. I've always thought about Marissa Tomei and my cousin Vinny. It's like, I've always wished I could see inside of that mechanic shop, the way she talked about my uncle's uncle was a mechanic, my uncle so-and-so on father's side was a mechanic. I'm like, just seeing that world would have been so special. And we try to have some of that in the show, of course, and to see her like leading the way and being so different from Mo, where she has the ability to have her own business. She's moving forward and she's in a really strong way, and she's kind of taking care of him. He's trying to take care of her, and he's trying to feel like a man about it. Like, I need this. To feel that way, he's not only trying to take care of his family and look after his girlfriend, wants to feel independent, but she's outdoing him on all these different levels. So that was fun to see that interaction and to get those like little piercing moments, right? Whether it be like, don't forget about her when she's asking for the loan in episode 4. He's like, don't worry about her. I'll just get the loan for you. And she's like, It was like one of my favorite moments. Like, it cracks me up every time. And it's just seeing what happens to him in that scenario, and then seeing her being, having that layer of between her and her father was giving her something to contemplate over and think about. Like, that's also very familiar with Mo as well. Like, she wants to take care of him. She wants to take care of her family. Like, you can tell, like, even though we didn't explore that as much as we can because we only had 8 episodes and so much story to tell, but you get a little bit in there. We planted a little seed there where you can create your own ideas of what you could be going through, which is really important for Teresa to play. And that episode 4 was really important to see how somebody that even as successful as she is, as progressive as she is, could be felt so small. Like somebody can make her feel so small, which is also important. Aside from her relationship with Mo, which is obviously complex. The guy's hiding stuff. He's dealing with his own emotional stuff. He loves her deeply, doesn't want to be with her, and does want to be with her, but he just wants to provide for her, as that is his excuse, truly, for his own,
Right.
his all these issues that he's trying to juggle throughout that, and then building up to the wedding scene, which is one of my favorite episodes, episode 6, just seeing Maria take her stance. Like, no, I don't care if we're at this wedding. We all got dressed up. Like, I'm out. Like this is not. I don't even believe you. Like, oh, you almost got arrested. You almost went down. She almost went to jail. You almost lost everything. And now I'm supposed to be your like, I'm your out. Like that's what it is. You're just not a love. It's not something you want to build with a partner. Like, no, you're wrong. And then adding another layer of my mom, her judgment towards Maria, the projections towards her, that interaction, what did that feel like? The awkwardness, the balancing that, the dead air with them together, just looking at each other was just so much fun to play with. Not only to watch, really entertaining, but also for her to play. I really, really enjoyed adding those layers. It's so important to add that depth.
What was the most important thing that you learned about ensemble writing? Because it has a really rich cast. I love your mom as a character. I love the immigration lawyer. Samir is just very funny. And hey, I'm always rooting for Abba Weinberg as well. The Jewish character
I love him. Yeah,
he's always mid-sentence in the end of a political argument that's very calm but like cutting, and it's just funny like to overhear like the end of the argument that you cut into whenever we see him in the hookah shop.
To me, like I always loved watching TV shows that were just so detailed in that way. Like just even though it's a moment, like just you said it, right? Abba Weinberg and Nazir playing those two characters. I've always wanted to do that. Somebody who grew up as a Palestinian, you hear this idea of like, oh, we don't get along, nobody talks to anybody, this and that. But that's just like it's so exhausting. Like, where's that other fucking side? Like, we all have relationships. They all work together. Like at some point they bleed into each other, they hang out, they talk with each other. And I take those stories that my mother told me with my grandfather and I put them here. Like that's like really grounded and deeply powerful, even though if it's for a moment. Those who catch it will get it. And to see just two people who also like, Nazir is a Palestinian Christian in the show, which is lost. Like people don't talk about Palestinian Christians. And you have somebody like Al Weinberg who's Jewish and he identifies as Zionist, and they're having like these really difficult political conversation where they're screaming at each other, mad at each other. But then the waiter comes and he's like, "Oh, do you want some tea as well?" I mean, like he's just so caring towards Abba in that section. But they love each other deeply, but they can have very difficult conversations.
Right.
Toby's character, Nick, in the show and showing the Nigerian side, like being authentic to Houston and what he feels like, what's his background, what is his story? Like, it's also interesting to me where he's going to go. And he's so talented. Like, he came off the bench and just did this and at such a high level. Like, it was so exciting to see him grow throughout the season as well. And my brother Samir, what an incredible portrayal of my own brother. Like, he really did a spectacular job of like having his own twist on it.
Samir is kind of on the spectrum, right? I mean,
he is.
It seems like the way he plays it, and it was tastefully done, but with some good comedic effect as well. Like I didn't think it was making fun of people, but I thought it was
never. Never. That was the intention. Never. He was, to me, it's like a brutally honest person. That's what makes it funny. Like,
right,
because it's situationally awkward is why it makes it funny. Never Samir. Like.
Right.
Ever. Like if I saw that or aware of it, I would stop it. Like that's not the intention at all. I'd make sure to cut it out. My mom's vulnerability, just having purpose and trying to figure out where she's going next and what she's going to do and try to accomplish and pull off. Also very, very important. Like all these factors, there's so many characters that I really enjoyed. Even like the Hamid character, Shifu, like I call Shifu, which is shit fool. A lot of people don't know what that is. Right. Some people didn't really get it. The Shifu part of it, but it's just like having somebody again like him who comes to America and he figured it out, right? He like figured it out a lot faster than me. He truly like fell in love and he married somebody. He found somebody he's so excited about, and just having him in the background is is interesting. It adds another layer for Mo to think about. The just having the culture surrounding the show as well. Like it's not this is not a show just for Arabs. It's for everyone. Like it's so important for it to be like a universally understood show. Anybody that's fish out of water. Every character like I really thought about, even like in the mechanic shop when Maria's going to argue with this guy. He just visually just so interesting and very Texas looking. Like just so that guy, I'll never forget him, bro. In that episode 2, with his hair and his face and look like Buddy, the farmer, the relationship between Mo and the Texan was so important to me. So showing two people who are so different yet so alike. I come as a Palestinian, we come from farmers, we come from sheep herders. This is, it's like it's a beautiful thing to see two people from very different backgrounds get along so well. So it's really lovely.
There was one image that I was wondering if it was from your real life. I would almost figure it would have to be because it's so striking and it affects the character so much. When, of course, they're transporting drugs and they're at a police stop, a checkpoint, and he's staring out the window. Mo's distracted by a dog that has an animal passport. And he reflects on the fact that he can't even get a passport after being in the country for over 20 years. Was that something real that you noticed, this concept of an animal passport?
Yeah, I mentioned it in the special, The Vagabond. It was a poster that I saw when I was leaving and being questioned at immigration. And I was leaving. It says, apply for your pet's passport today. And I saw an animal's dog with a passport on his neck. He's looking at me like this in the poster, and he felt like he was making fun of me almost. I'm like, "You such an asshole! Like, I don't even have a passport. A dog can get a passport. This isn't a day. Like, get it like processed pretty quickly." I'm like, "Yo, this is just so upsetting." Like it's just like, "Hey, dogs deserve passports too." Okay, fine, all right, but come on, for God's sakes! Like I've been waiting almost 20 years at that point. So yeah, that's something that I wanted to figure out how we could put it back in the show, and that's where we put it.
You have a lot going on in the finale. And, basically olive trees were stolen from the farmer who's agreed to sell your mom's olive oil, and you're going to go get them back because you put geolocators in the olives to find out who's stealing them. And Mo ends up on the wrong side of the border because the folks that stole them bring the trees to Mexico, and they're in the back of a box truck by accident, of course. And so he now has to figure out how he's going to get back to the country. And it's an interesting setup. And I'm like kind of looking at my watch, like, how are they going to resolve this in 22, 25, 27 minutes? And I kind of love that you don't, in which your finale is this crazy tracking shot of you on a motorcycle being chased by coyotes who have mistaken you for an infiltrator from another gang, which you're most certainly not. And you're just trying to get home and you're not sure how you're going to get on the other side of the border. Tell us about kind of putting your finale in that place, and if there is any movement on a season 2 being solidified or announced, so we could figure out what happens to that kid on a motorcycle driving on the wrong side.
I had that visual in pre-production. Like I figured it out. It was just like I had this, you could say it was probably Sopranos inspired, where you don't know what's going to happen next type move and the blackout of it all. It just had this visual of the motorcycle. And initially I had it close to the wide, and then I reversed the shot and brought it wide to finish on his, the uncertainty on his face was really interesting to me, and having it be so symbolic with a Palestinian now stuck on the other side of the border with a wall separating him from Texas was funny, hurtful, like all of it. It had all those layers to it that made it so interesting to me. But yeah, I don't think that we owe the audience anything in that space. Like I think it's really more interesting for people to start to visualize and imagine what his world could look like in Mexico. Certainly for me as a creative, it makes it really fun and interesting, and you can take it in so many different directions. So it's exciting. Yeah.
Fingers are crossed for season 2. So hopefully you'll have an announcement on that soon. What was your toughest scene as a writer? What was the scene that you remember coming back to over and over? And how did you creatively rise to that challenge?
Well, there was challenges all throughout. I would say the episode 8 with my mom in the kitchen and my mom's response was a tough one there. Yeah, the framing of emotionality not being too big, not being too small, but finding that delicate balance because my brother's there as well. So just like Mo would never like yell at his brother, loves him, and understands that he needs to be nurtured and cared for. So, and just like losing it without looking so mean and rude, but more in turmoil, inner turmoil. That was a really tough one that we rewrote, me and Harris. I'd be like, no, while we're filming another scene, no, this, let's say that, change this, change that. We'd go and come back and we're like, close. Give me 5 minutes and memorize this, put it together, and I would go perform it. It was like one of those really intense moments. I'm trying to think of another moment, but there's definitely the confessional was the hardest one. There was so much to cover, and there's so much we cut out. Figuring that out was tough. And just like flipping the order of stuff in the team, having the team, going back and forth together was really, really helpful. Like that was the toughest day. Emotionally, for sure, writing, for sure, what to say, when to say it, placement, really, really hard.
The structure of that scene was great because the first thing Mo does when he comes into the Catholic Church is he takes off his shoes out of respect and
right.
Like no. But then you just get on that slope of getting more and more serious, which was great. You were talking about editing a second ago. I'm curious, was there anything cut when they finally deliver the bag to Dante, or is that bag still sitting in a trunk somewhere? That was the only thing that I kind of wondered about. What happened to the bag after all the rigmarole of going through getting past the cops and everything? The bag of
Somebody
drugs.
Picked it up at the wedding.
Oh, okay. And was that cut?
No, it wasn't cut. I just left it be. I'm just joking with you. I'm just joking with you. God, yeah, no, we didn't we just like, it was assumed that he got rid of it.
All right. I had to ask, well, what was your biggest lesson on season 1 as a brand new screenwriter running a writing room during the pandemic on Zooms, which was, a first time experience for a lot of people. But what was your biggest lesson really on the page? Like maybe a light bulb moment.
It was really important to be open and, receive notes, but also super, super important to just like know yourself and be very aggressive in the story because it's in my DNA, in my life, especially something like this. I enjoyed every part of it. The difficult, the pain, the roller coaster, the emotionality of it, I really, really thought it was just so much fun and it was in my wheelhouse. And I felt like I was destined to do it. Like it felt like home to me. And like, nobody could prepare you to do a writing room over Zoom. Like,
right.
I love everybody that I work with, like truly, like I have nothing but respect and so much respect for everyone that I work with. And I appreciate them so much for putting that much work into telling a story that is based off of my life. I have so much gratitude to all of them, and they're all incredibly talented in their own way. And just, it's a blessing, like I love notes, weirdly. I know a lot of people might not like them, but I love them, listen to them. They're great. You don't know what they can birth. They can give you a whole thought that you didn't see in an idea before. It might not be that exact note that they give you, but it opens something else in your mind that you didn't have before, and you find what you're looking for. So that would be the biggest thing I learned. That's the dopest thing.
You have been very generous with your time. I know it's getting late over in Dubai, and I hope that there's good news soon on season 2, because I know that Abba Weinberg's going to save the day and smuggle Mo back into the United States.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
Get him back.
Honestly, didn't think about that. That's kind of cool.
but look, man, congrats on your Independent Spirit Award nomination and a great writing room and writing of season 1. Mo, thanks a lot for your time, man.
And thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you, Jeff.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to co-creator, actor, and head writer Mohammed Amer for being so generous with his time and coming down to chat about the first season of Mo on Netflix, which is eligible in multiple categories for writing for the WGA and beyond. Of course, while you're surfing around online, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. We just turned 10 this year, and we couldn't have done it without you. It's the holiday season, so I hope you will consider giving the gift of Backstory to the storyteller in your life. You just tick the little gift subscription box at checkout over at backstory.net. That's the way to do it. And now is the perfect time to subscribe subscribe because we just published our Wakanda Forever issue, which has a lot of great award season coverage in it. And you could see our full table of contents over at backstory.net. If you've never read us before, you could test drive us by reading a free full issue over at backstory.net or in our iPad app, Backstory. And of course, to sweeten the deal, I want to give you a $5 off coupon, which is discount coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5, and that will get you $5 off a 1-year subscription. And you could just enter that code at the shopping cart at backstory.net. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page support my passion project. So thanks for considering becoming a subscriber. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2022. All rights reserved. Folks, if you want to reach out to me, the easiest way to find me is on Twitter. I'm Yo Goldsmith or Backstory_mag. You could also find me on Instagram as Yo Goldsmith or Backstory_mag. Or you could look at my Facebook fan page, which I have set up for Jeff Goldsmith. I don't check that as much. I'm trying to get better this year. And of course, you could always email us at backstoryletters@gmail.com. And it might take me a heartbeat to get back to you via email, but I do go through it and try and respond to everybody that I can. So that's the other way to reach me as well. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.